Okay. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the very first Visualizing Histories Artist Talk featuring Choulay Mech and Tanierla. My name is Anna, and together with Sophia, we are both from the Museum Collective. The Museum Collective is a Filipino collective of museum and cultural workers, students, educators, and artists that aspires to empower, connect, and collaborate to promote contextualized and meaningful practice that responds to the needs of the times. The collective was established on August 21, 2019, and on 2020 was awarded an Asian Cultural Council grant. Through the grant, Visualizing Histories was created. Visualizing Histories is an attempt to address the ever-changing landscape of historiography and memorialization. It seeks to explore art production in contemporary art as a vehicle to communicate difficult and unresolved narratives from the past and make sense of it in the current time. Posed with the question, how does regional contemporary art in newer forms of historiography and remembering, three Cambodian artists who were born after the Khmer Rouge, Choulay Mech, Kanya Hul, and Sikling Song, and three Filipino artists who were born after the martial law dictatorship and EDSA revolution, Jo Tanierla, Eunice Sanchez, and Jel Suarez, together with Lodna Dito and Sasa Art Projects, have shared a space to converse about their backgrounds, their histories, and their own understanding of truth. To create a more intimate space of exchange, each Cambodian and Filipino artist was paired to converse and to explore collaborative approaches in making art. Today, we will be hearing from our first artist pair, Choulay Mech and Jo Tanierla. All right, so I'll start by introducing Choulay. So Choulay Mech was born on 1992. She is a documentary filmmaker and a freelance journalist. Originally from Kandal province, her work centers on human interest storytelling, environmental and animal rights issues. Choulay had her work exhibited at Sasa Art Projects, Bopana Audiovisual Resource Center, Tortem Art Gallery, Southeast Asia Junction, Bangkok Art and Culture Center, and Terra to Terra Festival. She also received an award from Creative Generation for awards, and this year she received grants from Anchor Photo Festival, Citizen Engaged in Environmental Justice for All, Sustainable Mekong Research Network for Media, and currently she is also a Mekong Data Journalism Fellow for 2021. So now I would like to pass the virtual floor over to Choulay. So Choulay, feel free to take over the screen. Choulay, can you hear us?
Yes.
There we
Hello,
go.
everyone. So right now I would like to share screen with all of you. Yes. I was born in 1992. Oh, by the way, because you already talk about my bio, so I don't need to talk about it anymore, right? Anna?
Yes, you may go ahead and proceed.
Okay. Yeah, because Anna already talked about my bio, so I don't need to talk about it anymore. So I would like to tell you guys why do I become an artist. The reason that I become an artist because of my sister. She is a photographer, and in 2018, she invited me to see the exhibition at Sasa Art Project. And on that time, I never understand what is art, contemporary art. And then I just ask question myself, why do they do a crazy thing like this? It's so heavy. They put so many things in their body, and I don't know who are they and why they do like this. But after I see that performance, I really want to study about contemporary art. So in 2018, I take a class at a social art project. It's called photo contemporary documentary and photograph. So we do we call co-exhibition, and my topic is talk about how the blind see. On that time, I just wonder and I ask the disability people who is blind, how do they dream? And they say that they never have a dream. So how can they see the day or the night? They say that they can see it by the sunshine. So I just explore with the photograph how to take what they see. And then another photo, it talk about the beauty, because exactly I'm also disability as well. This eye, it the blind people that I know, and go through my experience that I just feel like when we are blind, when we are disability, we feel like we are not enough. It doesn't matter how we make up ourselves, but we still look so different from another. And I just feel like some people discrimination us and think that we are so ugly. So I just want to put the eye and feel like it doesn't matter how we are ugly outside, but the real, it is in our heart. So I really want to let them know that they are not alone. I'm with them and I fight with them. And we always have the uniqueness and different part of beauty. And then I know one family that they are blind, husband blind, his wife blind, but their children is not blind. So I just take a photo of father eye and then the hand. And it is with a little bit video. It represents like the light is very important for the blind. It means the hand, it like their light, you know, it's very important for them. And another exhibition, we collaboration with a Thai student. And then I really want to talk about the Khmer Rouge. And when we did have discussion, we find out that even though Thai is better country more than us, but they also have a problem as well, just in different way. So this one, it represents us same but different. And this one, it talk about like Khmer Rouge, why Cambodia, killing Cambodia, 200 million or 3 million people. And this is my photo as well. I just, for this project, I just asked a question why Cambodian can kill Cambodia. And this one is like another exhibition with my sister. And this one we do experiment. On that time when we went to the river, my sister and I feel like that river it have a ghost. And when we just only us and we feel the same thing. And I told my sister, maybe we cannot continue to do it anymore. We just take only a few photographs and then we leave that place. Because when I study at school, I not really believe in spirit, you know. But when I start to learn about art and do a photograph, go to another new place that I have never go, I just feel like something so different. So sometimes when something we cannot see, it doesn't mean that it is not health. It doesn't help. And after we develop it, we become another photo that is a final artwork that we do that I do with my sister. And then in 2021, I was invited another exhibition because on that time, it like in Cambodia, we have a new rule that the girl cannot wear a short skirt, cannot wear a t-shirt that see-through, and a man cannot take a t-shirt in the public. And then I just have I have an idea that why people create the law, but sometimes the law that created it don't give us a freedom, and it block us. So I just want to do like exactly, it doesn't matter how the way we look, because some people they say that don't judge the book by its cover, but sometimes in country, in our society that we live, it's not like we learn from school. And then at Sasa they have like a new, it means a new opportunity for the people who want to do artwork about the Khmer roots. And on that time, I was invited by Bong Dara. Because I really want to go deeper about the Khmer root. So I really asked myself what was happening during the war and after the war, what our benefit from the war, why do we learn about the history. And on that time, I was not born in the war zone, but I just feel like I can see the people and animals get post-traumatic disorder because of the war. People in Cambodia, it like Cambodia is rich in a landmine left over from the war. People and animals become disability and look like a hungry ghost. Some children have no father to call, and the pagoda become their home. School become a jail to sentence the educated people. Home and street become a silent with bloodshed. The theater was destroyed by the fire, and the artist missing without the reason. So last but not least, I never ever believed that the war could bring hope and peace. So can we imagine what is the heritage from the war? And then this one. She is my grandmother, and she is a sister of my grandmother. And when my grandmother she married with her husband, so that is her children. So this one is not my mom, but she is my auntie. This woman, these three women was, it mean their husband was killed by Khmer Rouge. On that time, they don't say that they bring their husband to the killing field, but they just say that, oh, your husband need to move to a new place to work. But my grandmother, my auntie already know that their husband will never come back, but they cannot say anything or ask anything. So, and then I just want to do something about Khmer Rouge, which is more contemporary, because on that time we have nothing. Everybody need to wear only the black clothes, and what they have just only the spoon and the clan. So and chroma as well. So three these things is very important for them, and this is the Khmer Rouge skill to them. And on that time, even though they can eat, but the porridge that have only a few rice, so how can they survive? Yeah, they still can survive, but with starvation. And we still don't know who killed their husband, like my grandmother and my auntie. they still don't know who. They know that their husband already died, but don't know who killed them. And another untold story about the indigenous people. On that time, I know one artist. She is a Korean and she comes from British. She need assistance, so I go with her to the Protonakiri to do interview and learn more about the indigenous people. Before I went to there, my concept about the indigenous people, I really know very little for them. I just thinking that, oh, they are live in forest and maybe they never involved with Khmer rule. But what I think it was wrong. He's told me that he also killed his father on Khmer rule. He doesn't want to kill, but the Khmer rule for him to kill his father. On that time when I hear about this story, it made me so shocking. And I just feel like, oh my God, I need to do something. I need to learn more about them. I want to stay with them more. And I do really love the indigenous people because of their honestly. They don't, it means they are not breathing. And even though my family, they also conscious, when they look a documentary and they see the indigenous people offer the animal and kill the animal, and they think that the indigenous people is not really a good person because they kill so many animals, but exactly it's not true. For example, when I go there, it's very small pig, they kill it to offer to the forest, but exactly the indigenous people, they are the one who protect the forest as well. And one pig, not one person who eat it, it is very small, but 10 people need to eat it. And sometimes they don't eat it and they just give to us before they have it. So I can see how their life is so hard more than us. Yes. And then, yes, I did some story from according to Khmer root history of Ebupana. They say that so one grandfather who decided not, it means on that time when the Pol Pot take the power, so the indigenous people need to follow the Pol Pot as well. But have one man that he doesn't follow the Pol Pot. He loves his elephant so much, so he doesn't go with what the Pol Pot say. And then he was killed. The Pol Pot killed them and think that he is the Lunar spy. Yeah, so that's all from me. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. Thank you for your presentation, Choulay. And
Yes.
thank you so much. Thank you for sharing a lot of your work, previous and current. And yeah, like what you've said, it's I mean, along the process, you through research, you also discover that it's not only the people who are living in the cities, even indigenous people are actually affected by what happened during the 70s. So now for our next artist, who's Jo Tanierla. Jo Tanierla is an artist born in Manila and is currently based in Quezon City, Philippines. His works are resistive gestures against imperialism and its many insidious forms. Jo has an undergraduate degree in fine arts from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and in 2021, Jo was one of the winners of the Ateneo Art Awards, Fernando Zóbel Prize for Visual Arts for his solo exhibition, Pagburo At Pag-alsa, Natural Depictions and Illustrated Prophecies, Gelacio 1910, that was exhibited at the UP Vargas Museum. He has two upcoming residencies in 2022 through the Anita Magsaysay-Ho Arts Program in Casa San Miguel and the Abungalow Residency in Negros Occidental Philippines. We now welcome Jo, and you may take the virtual floor now.
Hello everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. So please, anyone, just notify me if I'm speaking too fast. So I'll be sharing my screen. Let's start with this. So that was me in high school around 14 to 15 years ago. So I was born in Sampaloc, Manila, but I spent my childhood in Cavite province. So in high school, I moved to Muntinlupa City and lived with my grandparents for a couple of years. In college, I rented many apartments in Quezon City, in the neighborhoods around the university I was studying at. And I have been living here since. So the service industry has provided me with different jobs in college and after graduating. I was an art tutor, and I was also a barista. So that was our photo. We were we were participating in an AeroPress national competition. So that was my partner, Brian. And then I'm currently an administrative staff for a technical service company. So there were also several exhibitions that came my way. And in October last year, my first solo project created by Carlo Paulo Pacolor was exhibited. So choosing to stay in Quezon City, specifically in Cruz Naligas. So this is Cruz Naligas. It's just adjacent the university. It would greatly contribute to the current direction of my practice, and outside it, it kept me close to the people who would eventually guide me towards collectivized activism. So these are my friends, and they're also my mentors. So this was in May 1 this year. And they would also nurture my participation within the collective called Tambisan sa Sining, or Interaction in the Arts. So it's also quite convenient because the majority of our activities and programs take place in Quezon City. These include the development of political awareness through educational discussions and lectures. So we also partake. So we have to digest these readings. They're also organizing. We also organize neighborhoods and communities of the exploited sectors. We also produce murals, effigies, and other protest collaterals. And we participate, of course, in rallies and public programs. These are examples, and other nuances of activist work. So these two are digital graffitis that we projected outside the US and the Chinese embassies in the Philippines. Right, and this one is a solidarity gesture for the union of Wyatt workers. So I drafted the statement and I invited the artists and writers from the 2021 Ateneo Art Awards to fix their signature and participate in the campaign. So maybe I can discuss more about this situation later. So I also recognized how class struggle is the primary contradiction within various societies, and that it is especially pronounced in a semi-colonial and semi-feudal one, such as the Philippines and other neo-colonial nations. And this primary contradiction with its layers of poverty, abuse, and state violence is a result of peasant and workers' exploitation by the big landlords, compradors, bureaucrat capitalists, and imperialists. So the last items that I mentioned, they belong here in the 2% of this triangle. And the workers and the peasants belong here in the 15 and 75% respectively. So the idea is that the wealth and the profits are concentrated within the 1 and 2 percenters, and the labor, at least the bulk of the labor, is performed by those in the 7 to 75%. Right. So I learned that for social change to be successful, it must be gradual, aware, and sensitive to the material conditions and needs of the people. An arbitrary, unscientific, and dogmatic approach like what the Marcos dictatorship or the Khmer Rouge did, and or what the Duterte regime is doing, can only bring about massive destruction and fatalities. And so the ruling class, the infrastructures of power that they created, and their authoritarian and murderous tendencies, and the resulting resistance of the masses against them are the subjects of my works. Oh, by the way, this photo is a painting by Antipas de Lotabo, a famous social realist in the Philippines. So the title of the work is Itak sa Puso ni Mang Juan, or it translates to a dagger or a bolo through the heart of Mang Juan. And Mang Juan is a placeholder for the Filipinos. So it describes the participation of the foreign corporations in the daily hardships that the Filipinos face. So onto my works, I'll be showing some work. So this is one of them. So in delivering the previously mentioned difficult subjects as artworks, I often use historical fiction. And some of my works in visualizing histories employ this device. With fiction, the stories and worlds I created intersect with other modes and trajectories of narration. My favorite strategy is to fabricate archives. Here's an example that surface folklore and local mythology and initiate alternative histories. So basically, historical fiction allows me to speculate on the past and use real historical events to make these speculations and the fictional world that I created more believable, more habitable. And these speculations do not necessarily adhere to physical reality. An example is this one. So it's a tranvia, a vintage form of transportation in in Manila, and then the tree is growing out right out of its chassis. Right. So, but with that freedom also comes the necessary care with the trajectories of the story. So, for example, with the medium. So with the medium, the materials that I work with are traditional, cheap, and relatively ordinary, like graphite pencil and paper. Sometimes I use watercolor, oil pastels, charcoal, and ink. And my technique is straightforward, naturalism and magic realism. So my insistence with representational works is in part motivated by the fundamental fact that it is most accessible to the majority of the population, even to those without an art education. I suppose this mode of drawing brings the works closer to the physical experiences of the people, of our senses, so it makes the meanings of the works easier to grasp, and therefore hopefully more effective. So sample works. The works I will be showing are part of my solo exhibition. Oh, sorry. Anyway, part of my solo exhibition, Pagburo At Pag-alsa, Natural Depictions and Illustrated Prophecies, Gelacio 1910. It translates to Ferment and Revolt, Natural Depictions and Illustrated Prophecies, Gelacio 1910. And it was exhibited in October 2020. So the works in this exhibition create a historical fiction that examines the American colonial period in the Philippines during the late 20th century. Specifically in 1910. It consists of drawings, paintings, and typewritten texts that are presented as fictional archives. So apart from historical fiction, I also relied heavily on folk tales and Philippine mythology to construct the story of the exhibition. So the first work, another work I'll be sharing and I'll be going deeper with is this one. So it's called Altar ng Sakuna at Dusa, or Altar of Calamity and Suffering. So the graphite drawing depicts an altar that consists of a bust. And so this was before I buried the drawing, right? So it has a bust, and beside it is a goblet, a cannon shell, a bullet, and a book behind them. And then a statue of decayed lungs in front of wilted flowers. So there we go. And then the items are placed, if you'll notice, on a tilted furniture with blood running down across the drawer. It was buried in earth for a month and then installed inside the exhibition space, framed by the actual soil it was buried in. So that's the final installation appearance. So the altar, as an implement for worship, points to the Duterte regime's successful cultivation of fanaticism. I wanted to highlight its populist and deceptive character, and the macho reverence it continues to enjoy. So other items of the altar also describe the regime's inadequate and corrupt governance and its reliance on a militaristic approach in addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. Something that is not only misguided but also fatal. For some reason, the regime sees guns as a solution to the national medical crisis. So despite the work's grim appearance, I think that the case suggests optimism. The downfall of the fascist enterprise, which the work evokes, can become the fertile ground where better social conditions will be cultivated. So the next work has a very long title. So someone's at the door. Sorry, I just have to go to the door.
Sure. No problem.
Okay, anyway, I'm sorry about that. It was an emergency. Anyway, so the next work is called, this is translation of the title. Where the waters are even is where our chains shatter. So the graphite drawing took me 4 months to finish, and it has become one of my favorite works. The drawing presents a symbolic version of a better future by making real, at least in archival terms, a fantastical situation. At a certain point in the ocean, the waves stop in the water's plateau, creating a narrow segment that is peaceful and even. So it's this one, the lighter one, lighter portion. So according to the work's narrative within this segment, exploitation is absent. The drawing implies a reconfiguration, that our current exploitative condition can be subverted and that we can evolve into a community that operates on an egalitarian mode of production, where no one can claim ownership of another's labor. Within this flat segment, political hierarchies are dissolved and economic growth is lateral and democratic. The drawing also conveys a washing away of previous systems, an incubation of healthy contradictions, a start that learned from its prior failures. So the next work is this one. The journal texts. These journal texts are written by the fabricated author Gelacio. So I am Gelacio, but I'm not very comfortable with putting my personhood in the exhibition. So I created an alternative avatar. So these are the texts. The texts accompany the drawings of the exhibition Pagburo At Pag-alsa, or Ferment and Revolt. These texts record the everyday features and adventures of the fictional and historical characters in the exhibition's narratives. They describe in detail certain events, both intimate and extensive. So, for example, this particular passage delves into a breakfast scene involving white cheese or quesong puti, bread, and a healthy meditation on coffee. But because I was a barista, so I thought it was appropriate to include it in the exhibition. So these texts also provide more context on the drawings and the narrative of the exhibition. And I wrote them as I was working on the drawings. So it was a simultaneous process. So the last work is this one, Kamay na Bakal, which roughly translates to, for me, iron hand. And the work is a graphite drawing on a rusted metal sheet. And it was mounted in a wooden frame and installed outside the museum. So the idea for Kamay na Bakal is mainly from Chingby Cruz's essay, The Filipino Author as Producer. In the essay, she expounded on the limitations of the arts in actualizing collective liberation and that a better alternative is taking to the streets and forcing the change we want. There was also the Wretched of the Earth, wherein Franz Fanon deliberates on the potency of physical action, not only as a last resort when all diplomacy has been exhausted, but as an effective method of uncompromised liberation of the people. And so as a partial response to these ideas, I extended the project outside the exhibition walls and placed the work in public view to convey that we should be in the streets and physically present, and that we should directly participate in liberative actions. Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Jo. Yeah, and for showing us your work, your previous work, and basically your background on and how you started and how you started as an artist and how you started talking about the sectors that are dear to you in your art. So now we open the floor for questions and coming from our audience. But of course, we do have we do have questions ready for both our artists, for both Choulay and Jo, for today's session. For our audience, please feel free to utilize the chat box to raise your questions or type them down. But to keep the ball rolling, first we wanna ask individually. I think Choulay will can answer first. What are your experiences with working with the different sectors or these sectors that depict histories in the peripheries? For Choulay, for the indigenous people, because you always you work with them most of the time in your documentary films and some of your photographs, and then for Jo later on for the labor sector. Choulay, you may answer the question first.
Yeah, thank you so much for your question. You, but I'm not really clear about
Okay,
your,
how
if
was
you don't mind, could you?
okay? How was your experience working with the indigenous people for your documentary films and for the photographs that you have made?
Yes, yes, yeah. I did a few about a few artwork and a few documentary about the indigenous
Mhm.
people, and I feel like the most difficulty about me that is being trust,
Mhm.
because the indigenous people, it's sometimes they don't understand what I'm saying, so we need another people to translate as well, like their children, and it's very hard, to, because I'm like a stranger and I go to talk with them, and what can I do to make them trust me, to let them tell me about untold story. Yeah, so I think it is very difficult for me. But another point that I still doing it and loving it, because I just feel like I love them, I love the way they are. And I just feel like they have a voice. Their voice not really so spread. They have a voiceless. So we need to bring their voice, not only in Cambodia, but can be around the world.
Okay, I have a follow up, but I wanna ask Jo to answer the question. So both of you answer the follow up at the same time as well.
Right. So in working with the, or at least within the worker sector, I think it's the difficult aspect really is keeping up to date with the current events, with the national issues, because um, most of the time these issues are being reported lopsidedly or sometimes against the interest of the workers. And so when a national issue arises, you always have to um, um, contrast it or to equate it or try to see the issue from the perspective of the workers, despite the various limitations or despite the inherent class differences. So the idea is to set sharp line that would protect the workers' interests. And I have to say that it gets very tedious because, for example, a recurring or a current issue is the continuing oil price hike. So it's been going on for 10 straight weeks now. And so that means that the workers, especially those in the transport sector, given the context of given the pandemic context, is additionally given a heavy burden, and of course the oil price hike also translates to the difficulties that other sectors are facing, not just for the workers. Yeah, and then there's also the overarching narrative of the that the Philippine society is functioning within a neoliberal policy of various economic rules and regulations, right? And so this means that there are imperialist participation and meddling in that affects the everyday functions of the Filipinos, and so you have to also take that into consideration. But also, we're working within the worker sector is also there are light moments, of course. There are fun times, especially when it's a collective activity. For example, within our collective Tulisan sa Sining, we often do production works, and sometimes we do community pantries, and we engage with neighborhoods that consists of informal workers. And whenever you get to these collective activities, it's really fun because you sort of forget about the problem, but at the same time you're profoundly aware that it's present. But just interacting with other people and just trying to do something positive, even if it's temporary, is it can be really fun. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I guess for both of you, it's very important to establish that type of relationship first with these sectors that you work with, and it's very very integral, and that becomes your guiding post for your art production for both contexts. Um, okay, next question is more about your process and this whole project. Um, this project. So of course we're working remotely. Choulay is here in Phnom Penh and Jo is in Manila right now in Quezon City. So when we started this project, what were your difficulties first in working together, and second, what made you decide to focus on the histories and the peripheries, essentially representing them in your works? Or yeah, focusing your works on telling the stories of these sectors when you join together and when you brainstormed in ideas in making the collaborative work. Who wants to go first? I can be anyone.
Yes. But if you don't mind, could you just ask one question by one, please? Because I cannot remember it well. So,
Okay. First question.
Yeah, the question I can answer.
First.
I remember
How
it.
was it
Yes.
like working
Thank
in
you.
a pandemic and trying to work out something together, and you haven't met each other? What are your difficulties? Let's start with that first.
I think it's very difficult for me and Joe because like we just communication by Zoom, and the time also different from each other as well. And I know that Joe very busy, but he really so good because he always make time for me. And I think if he in Cambodia, maybe we can work together more closer, and we will make artwork might be greater than this. But because the distance between I and him, and sometimes the language barrier, because my English is not really so good, I really so tired. but we really still get a very good relationship with each other. We share about the history between Philippines and Cambodia, and I learned a lot from Joe. And one thing that I really admire him is like he doesn't hide what he's know. You know, whatever I ask him, he always happy to answer me. Yes. Thank you so much.
Jo, do you wanna add?
Yeah, just to further reinforce the answer of Choulay, it's really difficult because, for example, when I accepted the project, I wanted really to know about or I wanted to understand, to have a better understanding of what Cambodia looks like, specifically if the economic and the political challenges that the Cambodian people experience are similar with what the Filipinos experience. And despite the close collaboration between Choulay and me, you can still there's still a limitation in terms of getting a good grasp. For one, because the senses that are involved are very limited. Just the visual and then just the readings. Yeah, but despite that, it's sort of like living vicariously, not only through Choulay, but with the documentations that you and Anna also post online, and I'm very interested in that as well. But let's see. So yeah, it's difficult, but yeah, I'm very happy that Choulay and I get along. Oh yeah, and one other thing I forgot. I am very also something that I learned from Choulay, which I think is very important, is that specifically for the sector that she chose to study, so that there are crucial similarities between the indigenous peoples of Cambodia and the Philippines, and the questions that they raise or the concerns that they have are pretty much the same. Questions about the land, the cultivation of land, and the human relationship that we have with land, and the various ecosystems that are thriving within that parcel of territory. So yeah.
Okay, so we have some questions coming from our audience now. Thank you. For both artists, this is from John. For both artists, it depends on you who wants to answer it first. Maybe this time Jo can answer first, then Choulay. What are some of the responses from the communities or the sectors that you have worked with to your work and practice? What have you learned about your own art making since working with and giving voice to these sectors? Jo can come first.
Let's see. I think that more instead of the idea of me giving voice to the workers, I think it's more listening. The idea is more of listening to the voices of the workers, and then helping in whatever way I can to amplify these voices. And then the crucial idea is that the workers know what they want, and they know the solution to their problems, but it's just that the solutions or the forces that hinder the workers from attaining these solutions are just massive and really too powerful. That's why we need not everyone outside the ruling class to participate in the struggle.
For Choulay, how did the indigenous people, and in some cases, a while ago I saw some photos of the elderly through your relatives. How do they respond to the artworks that you made that focuses on their story?
I think they respond in it because like we do a documentary about the indigenous people. So he is protect and take care of an elephant. And then we shooting him how he take care an elephant, how the elephant is important for him. So I think that is the very good communication communication that we do film or do art. It's not about an artist as well. It is about the person that goes through that situation and then they are the one who told it. It's not about who told it, but they are themselves who told about it.
Yeah, I think from both answers, that the most important thing that I got was to really listen, to represent, or not really represent them. A term can be different. To to lend a hand or be in solidarity with their struggles. It's really important to establish that relationship and let to listen to what they really want. Anna, do you wanna go and ask the next question?
I guess a follow-up. We got a question here from Akira Morita, which is, I guess, also related to the sectors that you work with. Do you have and feel motivated by outcomes you want for the people you work with? Like, what are the outcomes of your work so far with them? Are there any outcomes? And if you do, what are those outcomes? If not, what do you draw your motivations? If not, what do you draw your motivations from, or where do you draw your motivations from? So there, I guess there, like, do you feel motivated by the outcomes? Are there outcomes first there? Are there outcomes with working with these different sectors that you like to focus on? Let's start with that question. Have you seen any?
Uh, yes, for me, I think it really have outcome. You know, when we work in different sector, doing art or doing documentary, I think we just not only read on the book, but when we travel, I do learn a lot of from them. And when we talking about them, sometimes we also have ourselves as well. Because the story, sometimes it happened to them, just the first, but maybe in the future, it happened to us. So when we have another, it means that we already have ourselves. Yes.
Jo, you may answer the question. Thank you for answering, Choulay.
Yes.
All right. So I just want to note that Chulay's response is quite admirable because she has a very thorough understanding of the notion that the personal is also political. So I just want to put it there. Anyway, so on the outputs, the outputs that I participate in or the projects that I participate in for the worker sector is largely within the activities of our group, Tambisang sa Sining. So we have many outputs. We have many activities including murals and effigies. And as much as these works successfully are being successfully accomplished and be successfully paraded and are brought about in the streets, there's still I think it's still not quite enough. It still lacks a certain push, and it still lacks a certain potency that would finally invite more people to participate, to go in the streets and just demand for their rights. But however, there are also other activities. For example, the community pantry, which we did. We were able to solicit an ample amount of donations, and we were able to do two versions of it. The first one is the gas drive or the rice distribution activity, and then the next one is the Mungo Soup Kitchen. And so, sure, these activities were helpful for that day, but it's just an entry point, I would say, and more activities and then more participation is necessary to finally have that community engage with the political discussions and with the political activities that are happening and that are necessary to bring about a significant change for the better.
Okay, we have next question again for Jo. This is from Miss Eileen Ramirez. Thank you for the question. For Jo, she appreciates you giving us a glimpse of your roots, both to art and political education. Could you share any instances when you've had to navigate or work/play creatively vis-a-vis the exigencies of reception, given your desire to evoke engagement more readily with people who encounter your work?
Um, Sorry, I'm just rereading the question. Oh, okay, okay. So I think the works that I create are already readily accessible, right? You at a single glance or at a few with a few minutes of examination, you can understand what the work is trying to say. However, the artworks themselves can only do so much to engage or to evoke engagement, because it has to come from I mean, these are supplements. The artworks are just supplements that will hopefully solicit action, but the individual, the audience ultimately also has to have that within themselves to participate and to engage and to learn, more importantly. Yeah, but so for example, with the Kamay na Bakal work, which was exhibited outside the museum, um, it's an incomplete gesture at best, because it can only do so much, and it still operates within a very limited venue for the audience to see. And so I will have to go back to my previous, to my prior response, that these artworks can only do so much, because, and that's why we have to engage with other activities as well, including just going out to the streets and participating, and then having direct engagement, because these are the activities also with organizing communities. These activities are the ones that will truly break or introduce a breakthrough, with social engagement. Yeah. Sorry I took my time with the question.
All right. Thank you. Okay, there's quite a few questions already. So I guess here we can do Mark's question. He would like to know what new knowledge that you gathered from the collaboration or from the online conversations you had with your partner. So I guess through your exchanges, what new knowledge have you gained?
Yes, for me, the new knowledge that I get from him is like, I think it's so fast, if we want to search anything, we can just Google, and even though we understand from each other, but sometimes we share a picture of what food that he eat. Yes, so I think that the technology, it's good.
Thank you, Choulay. For you, Jo.
So I learned that there's a specific Cambodian chicken soup, lemon chicken soup, that looks like tinola, which is which is a native Filipino dish. And it's
one more,
surprising.
Joe.
Sorry?
One more, you should remember it. I told you the famous food in Cambodia. It's called a small fish, and it smells so bad. Can you remember it?
Yeah, yes. I think it's called prahok.
Yes, good. Cool. Yes.
So yeah, I think one of the more difficult aspects of this collaboration is, specifically when Choulay and I were showing pictures of dishes to each other. So she's showing me Cambodian dishes and I'm showing her Filipino dishes. That we cannot taste these dishes, and it's it's really frustrating. It gets frustrating, right? So but apart from that, I also admire the symbolisms. Sorry, this is going to be serious, but I also admire the symbolisms that Choulay used with her in her works. For example, the singular spoon resting on an empty plate, and then the black shroud, and then of course the plate is on the black shroud, and then this whole figure is contrasted with a rural landscape. So let's see. I think those are quite new to me. That's why I'm very interested in them. And I think the combination of the brightness of the landscape and the darkness of the figures are, quite effective. And I also learned that I mentioned this earlier, but there's a really critical intersection with the indigenous peoples of Cambodia and the Philippines. They view land as a tight community, as a singular ecosystem that nourishes itself and its environment. And that the foreign corporations come in here, come in our territories and see this community as mere tools for capital accumulation. So those are like pretty important things that I learned. And also the Choulay likes strong women. I showed her the film Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and she told me that Michelle Yeoh is one of her favorite actresses, and then that she likes Princess Mononoke. So yeah, I think it gave me the idea as well that the Choulay's desire for strong women resonates with her artworks as well as her journalistic practices. So yeah, I'm really impressed.
Thank you, Jo. But yeah, I think you could also see Choulay as a strong woman herself.
Yeah.
And don't worry about the food. Sophie will try to cook Cambodian food for you. We'll see if she can pull it off. All right.
Okay, we are down to we're down to our last question, last two. First, this is from Dara. Hi, Dara. So and Dara asks, he wants to say thank you first for the presentation, but the question that he wants to ask is, this is sort of like a residency of some sorts, because it's an exchange. Then you're given the choice to produce a collaborative work or not. So given that process, and as we have even us, as we learn with you along the way, from how many months since the time that we started working together, what do you think is the difference between an online setup like this and collaboration, online residency, and on-site or virtual? What are the challenges to working together by using digital tools like Zoom, by Messenger? What do you think are the challenges? Are there things that we can improve on? In any case, future or other collectives or other artists would want to do something similar. Who wants to answer first? Can be anyone.
Let's see. I would like to eliminate, I suppose, the hierarchy of the physical versus the digital residency, because I think that both residencies present limitations and opportunities. For example, with an online residency, you cannot smell the community, you cannot smell the landscape, and that's a major limitation for me. And then you actually cannot move around, and then you do not get to experience the place with all your senses. So that's a limitation. But with the digital residency, I suppose you can, and this is, I think, partly on me as an artist, because I think as artists we can use tools that are mainly operating within a digital realm. And there are various examples, like like currencies that are not really physical, and then you have other digital avenues. So it's really just a matter of going to different directions and then utilizing the tools that you have for these two directions. But with that said, I still think that, oh my God, I have not eliminated the hierarchy at all. Because, well, with that said, I think a physical residency is still much, much better. Yeah, you get to engage with communities. That's one. Yeah, that's it for me.
Choulay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for that generous answer, Jo. Choulay, floor is yours.
I think I'm not really so quite different from Joe, but I just want to add very a little bit about the digital. I think it's good, but if we just focus about the digital, sometimes I think the relationship between human being, it might be far away from each other. To be honest, I love traveling. I like to feel it, to see it, not just only to see it, but to smell it and to touch it. But for the digital, sometimes it hard for me to just see it, but I not really can feel it well. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you for your thoughts. Down to the last one, and I think this is from your sister, Choulay. Is Serera? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Serera. Okay. Hi. Okay. Down to the last one. Before we formally end, but of course, if people want to stay, then we can. Serera asks. She's impressed by trying out this whole mode. Now, given that we will be exhibiting the output and letting people know more about their own stories in a few weeks from now, do you think she's wondering if you're going to go on for future projects, or I mean, are you open to exploring possibilities of working, like maybe work working together to do a collaborative work maybe in the future?
Yes,
Yeah.
I already talked with Joe about it. We think that we hope in the future we can work together, and I really want to learn more about the indigenous people in Philippines. Maybe if we can go to Philippines and see how the difference between Cambodia and Philippines. Yeah, I just don't want to see it on Google, but I just want to see it in my real eye.
Jo?
Um, yeah, to further contextualize Chulay's answer. So her focus of study, indigenous peoples, and my focus of study, the worker sector. These are really representations of our respective populations, and more importantly, they are representations of the aftermath of the difficult histories, namely the Khmer Rouge and the martial law. And we can see that even though those parts of, or those segments of history are decades over, they still have lasting effects, and they still weigh down heavily on the daily experiences of the majority of the populations. And so I think if Choulay and I can further work together, we can flesh out these relationships more, and we can probably come up. I'm sure we can come up with something that would illustrate the intersections between these two sectors, and more importantly, how they would, or introduce or imagine an idea wherein they could resist together. So I think international solidarity will play a role in here.
Yeah. Um, that was a good ending but I think I missed one question. This was from Visna. This is directed to Jo. She says, I can see you're involved with activism in art. how do you consider yourself more? Do you consider yourself as an artist or an activist more?
Oh, I think the two things are not mutually exclusive. Yeah, you can be an artist and an activist at the same time. But I found your question. And well, not to listen, of course. So I think the question also asks if the relationship between art and activism.
Yeah.
So the idea is, the, for example, for myself, whenever I create an artwork, I always try to think in terms of how would this help the struggle of the not only of the worker sector but also of the oppressed population in general. And the art does not always help, of course. It's a very limited medium, but you do what you can. And I think with that awareness, with the awareness that you are using a very limited medium, and that you are and that the struggle is really much more expansive than the mere production of artistic outputs. You force yourself to engage in other activities, and I think these are the more important aspects. And art is one solution. Art is one response to that. Art is one form of activism. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Pwede pa question? Sorry, in English. Yes. As long as everyone's willing to stay in. I mean, if you have something to do, you can freely step out. But I guess if there are more questions coming from the audience, we can extend to at least like 5 to 10 more minutes. Mark has a question connecting to Visna's question. I would like to also know, when you first encounter a community or sector you want to work with, how do you introduce yourself? For Choulay, do you introduce yourself as a journalist or an artist? And for Jo, do you introduce yourself as an artist or an activist or a part of like a group? And what are the usual responses coming from the communities that you work with? Choulay, maybe you can start first.
Yeah, for me, I not introduce myself as an artist or activist, but I introduce myself as a simple person like them. And what are the
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What does it mean for the second question? What are the internal response?
What is the usual response once you introduce yourself to the indigenous communities? Hi, I'm Choulay. How do they usually respond to you? How do they react when you
How do
introduce?
they?
Yeah.
When I introduce myself to them and
Yeah.
they react to me, I think some people they react so nicely, but some people like they don't want to talk with us. So for me, I just talk with people that they want to talk with me. I don't want to force anybody to answer the question that they don't want to answer.
Okay. Thank
Yes.
you. That's awesome. And I like the fact that you introduce yourself like as a human being first. Like, hi, I'm Choulay. Okay. Anyway, so Jo, answer the question. Can you? May you?
Oh, sure. I also remembered from Julia's response that we were also having many conversations about the state of journalism or the media publishing in Cambodia, and the really difficult situation it is also encountering, similar to the case of the Philippines. And I think that her response is really practical, and in some aspects it is, I suppose, the optimum direction to go with. And so with that, for myself, the or at least in the Philippines, or in my experience, in my very limited experience here, in my context, one does not really introduce oneself as an activist. You go directly to what you can, or to what you can engage the community with. So, for example, we outright tell the community or the group that we are artists and we can help you with these projects, etc. For example, with the community that we are currently collaborating with, we outright told them that we can conduct art workshops and just not just community pantries, but also art workshops. And these gestures, these activities are entry points for further collaborations. And for example, with the jeepney drivers that we are also planning to engage with, we tell them right away that we can help them with their slogans or their protest collaterals. So art plays a more practical role with in terms of engaging with communities, and I think that's so art becomes a simple tool, and that's important because what matters is the output, especially in engaging in, or especially with activism, with activist work. Yeah, that's it.
Wow, we have fleshed out a lot of things in the in that in that couple of minutes. Yeah, thank you, Akira, as well, and thank you, thank for everyone. But before, of course, we end, Anna, do you want to do this before we end today's session? Like what we've been mentioning, we only have one pair for today. Like, it's only Jo and Choulay, but Visualizing Histories has three artist pairs with us. And for next week, we have back-to-back session. Anna?
Next week, we have Kanya Ahul and Eunice Sanchez on November 13th. So they're actually here as well. And then we also have Jel Suarez and Sikling Song on November 14th. So the November 13th session will be moderated by Load Na Dito, and November 14th, Sunday, will be moderated by Sasa Art Projects. So, and of course, we will end this entire discussion with a panel roundtable conversation on November 27, which is to be moderated by independent art curator John Balaguer. So the exhibit itself, Visualizing Histories, will run through November 24 to December 18 at Sasa Art Projects, and an online version will be available at the Museum Collective's website. So details will be to follow. All right, so again, thank you very much to everyone for joining us this afternoon. Thank you for all those who asked questions. And of course, a big thank you to Jo and to Choulay for being our very first artist fair. We've learned so much from you guys. Thank you so much for taking time to share your works and also your insights. So thank you guys. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we hope to see you next week for the last two with Kanya Ahul, Yuni Sanchez, Sikling Song, and Jel Suarez. So thank you guys and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Awesome.